Tara, what does Pooh Bear call his girlfriend?
I can't imagine.
Of course you can. He calls her honey.
Oh, that's sweet, honey.
We've been reading little kid stories lately, and that one I thought was sweet.
Oh,
Honey.
honey.
Honey pie.
Almost said honey bear. I should have said it.
That works.
Let's guess. My husband does not like the term honey. I don't know why.
He doesn't like what?
He doesn't like to be called honey. That feels patronizing. No honey for
Well,
Mike.
we don't have to worry about that today. I won't call any of you honey. All right. Welcome to the Daily Huddle on Wednesdays, where Tara and I talk about everything to do with relationships and communication, because we know that better relationships build better communities. I can't even speak today. We just love relationships and communication. So we're going to talk about it today, and we're going to answer the question about flow state and how do you get yours? The question we get a lot. Okay, great. Here's this flow state thing. How do we get it? So here we go. Before we get started, Tom, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. How are you? And where are you?
I am the way I say I am, Kathryn. And I am right here and present.
That's right. The only place to be. Thanks, Tom. And I am going to ask Cece. I see her on here. I see her now. She's just showing up a heart. Cece, I would love to know, what are you grateful for and who are you going to hug today?
Thank you. I'm grateful to be a blessing to someone else. And what else am I? What's the other question?
Who are you going to hug today?
Oh, I'm going to hug some unknown person today with my mask on.
I love it. They're going to be so blessed. That will be a blessing to another person, I'm sure. Thank you, Cece. And Tara, I'm going to ask you the last question because it does really get us present. What time is it?
Let's see. No watches. But I only know one time. The only time that matters. The time is now.
Yeah. Time is now, and we're right here, and we are the way we say we are. So thank you for joining us on the Daily Huddle today. And Tara and I are going to talk about this flow state thing and how do you get there? And Tara had an experience this weekend that took her there, and she's going to share that with us.
Yes, thank you, Kathryn. I mentioned a few minutes ago that I'm just going to be fully honest about my flow state experience over the weekend. I pulled out all my old notes because I've done a lot of studying of flow state, and I realized that I have not been as intentional as I should be to set the stage for it. But this weekend, I wasn't necessarily seeking it. I just set the stage for creativity and alone time. So what I decided to do was go to the mountains all by myself and spend a weekend. And the purpose of it for me was to do three things: hike, do yoga, and write. And that's all I plan to do. No schedule, no distractions, no commitments. And that's exactly what I did. Well, I got there on Friday, and I was still kind of just, trying to figure out, how I was going to settle in and food and little details. And it was nice. But on Saturday, something magical happened. And that's what I would like to share. And then I would like to share how each of us can tap into flow state more often and why it's so important for us, our productivity, our happiness, and our relationships. So on Saturday, one little caveat I must mention is that I hurt my foot. And so I was not going to be able to hike like I normally would, like just like super aggressive, jumping roots and going as hard as I can. But I did some yoga on Saturday, did some writing, and then I went out, put my earbuds in, and I put in the Martin Sexton station, and I just started to stroll through the mountains. And I was completely alone, and the sun was beating down on me, and I had nowhere to be. I already felt satisfied that I had written some really good, juicy stuff for my book. I'd come over a hurdle. I felt all stretched, and I had breathed well from yoga. Nobody was looking for me. Nobody was expecting me. And I just meandered through the mountains. And what happened has not happened to me in a long time, but I just let it go. Instead of trying to fight it, I just let this happen. And what happened was I started dancing. So I'm not really actually hiking anymore. I'm just dancing in my weird, probably like Elaine Bennis dance moves through the mountains. And the part of me was like, you're weird. And then I was like, it's okay. And I just kept letting myself dance about the mountains. And what happened is that I started coming up with these like most creative ideas for blogs and ways to navigate my book. And so I had to stop and like write some things down, which I hoped I would be ready for. And I was with a tiny little notebook. I made some notes and I kept dancing and I kept breathing and I kept feeling and I kept creating and I kept dancing and I kept creating until I got back to my little place where I was staying and almost raced to my computer and just started pouring out my heart and my creativity into that computer. Absolutely had no idea what time it was. I was completely in flow state. And this experience cannot be specific to anyone listening. I do understand that. But the exciting thing is, and here's where I want to share the science of it, we all have the ability to tap into flow state. And I want to take it backwards for us. So I'm going to explain the science of it just briefly. But at the end of flow state, here's why I think that we need to prioritize it, because we need to understand the benefit of it. In the moment, it may feel very selfish, but there are 5 neurotransmitters that take place during flow state. It starts with dopamine, it goes through some others, but it ends at the end of flow state when we're powering out of it. That fires up something called serotonin. And serotonin is what makes us believe in ourselves, quite frankly. It feels really, really good. It makes us feel proud. It makes us feel capable. And that is the energy that we need to take back into tough times, tough relationships, building connection. And that is really the biggest sustainable benefit of flow state. So I want to break it down just a little bit more, if I may. You still with me, Kathryn?
I'm right here with you. I'm
Okay.
loving it.
I know I tend to like start to get into science too much, but I wanted to share the experience. But then as a science-minded person, I also like to share the proof of it. So here's just a quick lesson on what happens into flow state. And then I want to talk about your flow state experiences, Kathryn, and then how maybe we can help you and me and others to go there, to really achieve flow state. So in the beginning of flow, we feel dopamine. That's the very first thing that we feel. And most people understand, I believe, and have heard me talk about dopamine. And that is when we feel like really focused. Well, I made a few notes of things that I don't typically reference about dopamine because this is important for flow state. Dopamine is a skill booster. So if we're wanting to go into flow state, we might want to do something that fires up our dopamine without any negative reaction before we actually decide, okay, I'm going to go into my most creative or my most productive place. So for example, I might read a really creative essay. That fires up dopamine for me. It gets my creativity flowing. I could eat a donut, but that has negative residual effects. I don't really love that I chose to eat a donut. So do something positive that gets your creativity or your productivity flowing. Then what happens once that dopamine starts flowing and we are not distracted, then norepinephrine fires up. So that makes our heartbeat just a little bit faster. It builds our muscle tension. And interestingly, it also gives us a glucose response. So we have energy. We have energy. Even if we thought we were tired, our energy fires up. Then guess what happens? Our endorphins kick in. Most folks have heard of endorphins. Endorphins, y'all, are the natural body's answer to opiates. It's our natural opioid. It kills our pain and elevates pleasure at the same time. And that's why endorphins can be pretty addictive. Like, you know, some people that are like so addicted to exercise, it's truly a physical addiction. There's been studies that show that endorphins are 100 times more powerful than morphine. I mean, endorphins are the real thing. So when we're in flow state, we are so focused and we also are we were relieved of any type of pain or stress. And then the big baby that I love to talk about is anandamides. That's that bliss state that lands on our same receptors as marijuana. Those are there for a reason, not just to get high. This is a natural high. And what happens when that's flowing is that we are able to achieve something called lateral thinking. That means like we've been struggling about a problem. We're trying to, like Kathryn, as it might apply to you, like trying to figure out something in your workshop. And then all of a sudden you're like, this is how I'm going to make it happen. So all those chemicals are flowing, and that's what puts us in flow state. But before I continue on, I want to have a conversation with you, Kathryn, because I don't want to oversimplify it, because now it sounds like, okay, so how do I get me some of this? And it's not as easy as we think, but with a little bit of habits, we can get there. So tell me about your experience with flow state and your challenges around it.
Well, as I hear you talk, it feels like, ooh, I could just get a pill or something to inject myself with that particular hormone, and then that hormone and that hormone, or, and so I don't think about it that way, but it is really interesting to hear the journey. For me, I think, okay, that's great, but how do I create that? And what I heard from you is no calendar, I can't do that when I'm in my house and I have to cook dinner. Well, I guess I could. Maybe that's not a true statement, but it feels like when we have the pressures of the world, we are much less likely to be in flow. And so it's either about finding the joy in this moment, and then maybe some of that happens, or really creating the container for it like you did. And I can't think of a flow state moment right now. I know if I had time that I would, but what I can tell you is kind of the opposite of trying to get into flow and not doing that. You mentioned my workshop. When I go down there and I think, oh, this is gonna be great, I'm gonna lose track of time, and I don't. And all I can think about is how I just messed that up, or that's not looking right, or I have a bunch of things I need to do. I should be doing that instead. It's the opposite of flow state. So I'm like thinking to myself, how do I get from there to where you're talking about when I'm not there, when I don't have a weekend and I don't feel that great and I don't,
So I love these questions because, as I've mentioned, I've studied a lot and I need to be more intentional about making time for it, as do you. Because there's
probably
really,
all of you, yeah.
Yeah, there's really 5 triggers that can help us to get there, but they feel like what you're saying, like, how do we close out the world? But when we have curiosity, passion, purpose, autonomy, and mastery, those things will charge us to continue to go back to flow state. But I want to pick on purpose for a minute, because we have a tendency to think, okay, when it matters for other people, then we're going to be able to go there. No.
Wait, can you say those 5 again? I know you're going to talk about purpose, but can you say those 5 again? Because I think that's really important for us to hear.
Yes. Curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
passion. If these things don't apply, you're not going to get there, is what I'm really saying. Curiosity, passion, purpose, autonomy, and then mastery, like believing that you can master. So those 5 pieces are the motivators for flow state. And the reason why I want to focus on purpose is that we're so driven to make a difference for other people and not be selfish that we feel like the purpose has to matter to somebody else. And quite honestly, I have to say, especially as a parent, like, if I think something will benefit my adult children, it feels better to me. But this is where we have to remember that closing out the world and giving ourselves space just for us, in turn, does benefit those we love and helps us to make a difference. But it has to be initially about us. It has to be that. So to really simplify how to get there, and we can't do it necessarily every day. A couple great, like, easy tips to understand, okay? One is know your circadian rhythm and when you are at your very best, and block that time. For me, it's mornings. For me, it's not just any old morning. For me, it is after exercising and before I've hit any other type of distractions. So if I can get up early, get a great workout in, and then get to my computer, I'm on fire. But if I watch the news first, could kill it. If I start looking at text messages, it could kill it. So I don't want to oversimplify this. What we have to find ourselves is no connection and no consumption. The 2 C's. connection and consumption. We have to quiet our phones, quiet any type of media, and we can't be consuming. So that means we can't be consuming media. We can't be consuming donuts. We think like, oh, an extra treat to help my flow state. It's interrupting our flow state. So we need to be in a place where there's nothing but ourselves and whatever it is that we're wanting to achieve. You've heard me say this before also. We need to be highly challenged and highly skilled. If we don't have both of those, then we're either bored or we're stressed, and it will kill flow state. Highly challenged, highly skilled, no connections, no consumptions. Last tip I want to offer, and this is an easy one to remember. Has anybody heard of the Pomodoro effect or the Pomodoro technique? This was, I don't remember who discovered it, but Pomodoro means tomato in Italian. Okay. And it was named this because little kitchen timers used to look like tomatoes. And so the key amount of time when you feel like, oh, I don't know that I'm really totally there is 25 minutes. And so it used to be set the kitchen timer for 25 minutes. We can allow ourselves 25 minutes to block out the world, not consume, not do anything else. And the last thing I want to say is it takes practice. Sometimes it happens magically like it did for me this weekend, but I am still on a high from it. I mean, endorphins, anandamide, that gives us a high. And when I think back to it, I still get that creativity flowing within me. So I say, if you try it, you don't achieve it, keep trying, keep analyzing.
I love the practice piece. Well, I think I was just about to say this, that you said, know your circadian rhythm. And I think it's also know thyself, know yourself.
Okay.
Know, and I was going to say, because I would need to block time. Having, 2 hours of open-ended time sometimes is overwhelming to me. And I think I can do it, but having some time. So I think knowing yourself, what time of day, what gets you there, what doesn't get you there, like you said, text messages and things like that. And the practice piece is really interesting because it's saying that if I wanted to get better at being in flow state more often, or those are two separate things. If I wanted to get better at being in flow state, and if I wanted to get into flow state more often, I can. Because I typically think it's changing for me right now in this moment, but that it just magically falls upon you and all the stars align. It's that perfect day on a boat, on the lake with the perfect people, all in the perfect mood and the perfect, and then, who could recreate that? It's just the perfect. But what you're saying is there's a formula and we can practice it and get into it more. So that's exciting because then I don't have to wait for all of those perfect circumstances to arrive.
Totally. Yeah, I want to mention something because you said, the perfect people on the perfect boat, et cetera. There is something that has been studied called group flow, but the mindset of it is more like teams. Like teams can really be in flow when there's a lot of trust, there's a lot of connection, they're all driving toward the same goal. And so I don't want to get into that right now. That would be team flow or what they call group flow. But being with loved ones out on a boat is not flow. It is still an amazing, beautiful experience, which could be foundational to flow, but it's not challenging and we're not working towards achieving something. I'm not saying it's not beautiful and amazing. I just don't want to get it confused because it feels so good that we think, oh, this is flow, baby. That might be oxytocin, it might connection, but we're not being productive, we're not achieving. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, he's the first person he actually is the discoverer of flow. He says that it is when we feel our best and we're performing at our best. That's flow. Snow skiers are big studiers of flow. They're just totally into it. So it is performance. It's feeling fully mindful and focused, no distractions. And Kathryn, I think that's where most of us, that's the challenge. It's not so easy to just say, I'm just not going to be distracted. Some meditation before it, knowing yourself. There's so many tips. I see we have questions coming in. So yeah. And we have a note. Talk to us, Tom.
Well, thank you, Tara, Kathryn. very stimulating topic. As I'm hearing you talk about flow state, and you mentioned those 5 triggers, and then you just talked about, practice. I just want to ask you if I'm hearing you correctly. So it sounds like there are degrees of flow state. So if you're, talking about practice, you might not necessarily be in full flow. So then, as I think about those 5 triggers, I would guess then that you might not necessarily be feeling all 5 at any one time, but I think the goal is to then help develop yourself so that you really are feeling all 5, because then all 5 then would feed into a full flow state, and it may take practice and some of these techniques that you're starting to mention. So am I thinking about that correctly?
I think so. I think that is a really powerful point. Like it's not like, did you get there or not, like all or nothing. I think that is a super powerful point. I mean, yes, you can be in a really nice state where you usually flow is around either something active, like sporting, competitive, or creativity. But software developers totally can be in flow. And to me, that's not creativity, but if you're a software developer, you darn sure think it is creative. So everybody has that. I don't want to insinuate this is for artists. It's for us to be able to be free to create. That's when we achieve beyond the normal expectations, and that's flow state. So I think you're spot on, Tom, that, yeah, I mean, a little bit of it, can we get better and better at it?
But I'm curious, actually, Tara, what he asked, because he's saying, I think if I heard him right, my question to that is, do you really have to have all 5? Because I think that's part of what he's asking. And it feels like you do need all 5. If you're not curious, I can't imagine how you would be in that sort of state if you don't have any sort of passion about it. You may not have a ton of passion about it, but do you need all these 5 things to get there?
I'm never going to say that I know something finite when I don't. This has just been based on my study, but as I think about it, like, let's just think, if you're a snow skier, are you curious? That's probably not the perfect word, but dopamine makes you eager to get to whatever the reward is. That's kind of like curiosity, right? So it's something to be explored. I'll tell you that Stephen Kotler he's today's expert on flow state. So if anyone's curious to find out more about those, he's the guru. He's got some books, he's got videos. Stephen Kotler, Kotler.
Well, I'm going to answer my own question from experience, because I've been thinking about it as you're talking. And I'm going to venture to say yes, that for me anyway, I think those 5 would need to be, because I'm thinking through some different scenarios. And if I don't have autonomy, I could see how that's not going to work. Somebody's over top of me and I don't have freedom to do what I want to do. So I'm going to venture to guess yes. And maybe it's the hypothesis, and we can test it out and see how it goes. But what do you think, Tom?
Kathryn, I go back to what you were saying a few minutes ago. You're describing like a typical day where it's very difficult to break away from your schedule and what you've got to do next. Of the 5, some may lead the others. I go to autonomy as, the most important, because if you don't have the assertiveness to push stress away, to push things, away to create the space, then I don't think you're going to then feel, the curiosity and the passion and the mastery. I don't know, just my thought there. Thank you.
We'll have to do a little experiment and come back and report on it.
I think that'd be really cool. I love where this is going, because I think what Kotler calls those 5 are the intrinsic motivators to flow. And I'll tell you what's really fascinating is, most of you all probably have heard of Daniel Pink. He's done a lot of study about what intrinsically motivates us, and he always focuses on autonomy. Like, people have to believe in their ability to do things independently
and be empowered to do them.
Yeah, not necessarily alone, but independently. Yeah, that's one of the big motivators, one of the 5. So, yeah.
And then thinking back to the intro, is there any room for honey to stimulate flow? But maybe we can take that offline. But thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
So, but
well, I think it's great, because it gives something to, sorry for the pun again, to chew on, to think, I want to get into flow state, and knowing that I've got some guidance and some, It's not just some, like it's a random where even if I do have a weekend and I don't get there, it's like, here are some ingredients, to make that happen. Ron.
Hey, I like this. I like this show. Really good, man. I just posted that I have to go and re-listen to this again. But one thing out of the flow state autonomy, and I guess I don't know if it's what Tom just alluded to, but does the autonomy kill teamwork, or is it as much as you mentioned, Tara, that we are social beings, so does autonomy kind of really fit in that listing? Would you kind of, I can see the four: curiosity, passion, purpose, and mastery, but autonomy, to me seems like you really want to travel solo and not include anybody in your, I guess, in your flow, and that way you get much more done. Or is it just to that level, and then you can get people into it later on? Is that what you're saying?
So thank you for asking that question. And I just want to clarify that those 5 components are intrinsic motivators to flow. But, and we haven't really even tapped into team flow, which is something different. But let's focus on what you asked, which is autonomy. Really, autonomy is more of a mindset, like agency. Like you could be in a group creating something with a team, and you still have the confidence to know that you have a valuable contribution. That's autonomy. It's not isolation, like we talked about last week, I think. So it's not like I need to be by myself. Now, for me in my writing, I need to be by myself to be in my very best place. But if I'm working with Kathryn, we can get in the flow state. When we're creating like one of our retreats or something, we can totally be like, boom, 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 boom. And it's because I believe in my part of it. That's my agency, my voice in what we're creating. Does that help?
Got it.
Yeah. Got it. I would love to hear about your flow state as it relates to your art.
I guess for me, it's really, I think the structural aspect of it for me is just be in that space. Be in that space. When I clear up my studio, when I am in the studio, I am in that mode. And what worked best for me is really right out of bed, go in there. Or really get in there after dinner and really forget about the whole day. The whole day get forgotten, whatever it was. So I think it's early. I can't define my rhythm, or to say my rhythm goes with what I'm doing, with whatever is in the canvas or whatever started. And the more I drive, put the first layer, and there's this anxiety that keep coming. I guess it's driven by the layers, I think. Whatever I put on the canvas, I'm looking for the end, and in looking for the end, it's just build up. It's just build up. It's just build up until the piece is complete. So I think that's my best way to describe it.
I like that.
That was a beautiful description, I believe. I don't know if you have rituals or not, but that's one of the things that I've studied and learned. And I know we're pretty much out of time here, but I do want to leave. I want to kind of summarize the tips, and I'd love to hear back from you all after, a week or so, if you've taken on any of these tips. And those are to make sure that you find the best time for you to be completely not distracted. So you're in the moment and focused, whatever that takes. Put yourself in that position. If you're not feeling it and you've created the space, do something that amps up your dopamine. That might be music, that might be reading something creative, and then allow yourself to not be connected to anyone or anything, not consuming, and be totally creative and curious. And that can be in an athletic space, in a work space, in an artistic space, whatever that is for you. And remember the Pomodoro technique, 25 minutes. Start there and see where it takes you. So have I left anything out, Kathryn, before I close us?
No, I think it's great. I think it sounds like a challenge to
I
try
love
out.
I love it. So I'm going to continue to build rituals around my getting into flow state more often. Did you raise your hand again, Ronald?
Yeah. Just a quick question. So it looks like all the 5 flow state, and I don't know if I missed that in your explanation, but the 5 flow state is connected to each one of them is connected to the dopamine, the serotonin, endorphin, and is that correct?
So the 5 things that I mentioned are intrinsic motivators to get into flow state. When you're curious, when you're passionate, when you have a purpose, when you feel confidence in your autonomy, and you know that you can be a master of what you're doing. That means those are the motivators for flow state. The neurotransmitters are, dopamine kicks it off, then norepinephrine and endorphins start flowing, then anandamide kind of takes over. And as you come out of flow state, serotonin is what powers us back into being our best communicative self on this earth. So,
Got it.
yeah. With that, I will close us out with our 7 tenets, and I'm going to start with love. And I just have to say, I love you all, and I love that you're passionate about this conversation. So don't forget to love and to give. Give of your talents, of your time. Just simply be generous. Remember to stress less. That means to let yourself laugh out loud, eat more plants, get your sleep, and absolutely make sure that you are moving that body every day. See you next time on the Daily Huddle.
Thank you, everybody. See you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent job. Bye now.
Y'all.